I'm back. Hello, friends. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever in the world you're joining. Welcome. Welcome to Robert Duck Thursdays. We hosted Jueves de Quack this morning, and now we're moving on to our English stream. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I'm Andrea Griffiths, a Columbia dev in all places. I hope you're having a good week. I'm excited to be here today because we usually do the streams a little bit different. Like we will have either the change log or we open up like the GitHub Copilot app and it's either me or one of my colleagues just kind of hacking away. But this week, we're doing something a little bit different because I got to meet someone in real life that was extremely impressed by before I met him in real life. And once I met him in real life, I became even more impressed. But we have sort of those hallway track conversations that you have that you don't expect when you go to conferences or events. This is why it's so important, y'all. I know it's not for everybody. Not everybody likes to go to these things and like talk to people, but it's so you never know. You never know who you're gonna meet. You never know how they're going to expand your brain. And it was partial rant on my part, really, because we were at the OpenClaw. And hey, shout out to all the OpenClaw users. If you use OpenClaw, let me know in the chat. Let me know. Let's ask a more direct question. What is your claw's name? Tell me. I'm very nosy. I want to know. I'll tell you mine. I have Rusty. I have Luna. And then I have a love hate relationship with the work one that shall remain nameless. I'm not getting attached. Although I will mention later how it's made my life so much easier. So, anyways, at the OpenClaw event in Microsoft Build, I got to meet one of the maintainers at the time. And this person has been doing a ton in the space. It's been in software for a very long time. It's got actually over 20 years in enterprise IT. It's the CEO of his own company, and it's been helping us with the OpenClaw for Teams maintainership, which he can tell us a little bit more about what that is. And he's been doing a lot. He's built things to watch how his agents work. I think that's one of his biggest projects, and it might be open source. I think it is actually. And he's going to join us today to share a little bit about the way that he's been envisioning the new frontier of AI and working with agents. I think a lot of us have been excellent consumers of like, I just want to set up an agent and get it to do certain things, not thinking beyond it's not a software product. Like, am I doing a SaaS? Am I creating an app that I'm then going to sell? But turns out there's a lot more opportunity there. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome, Brad, to Jueves de Quack. I'm still in Spanish from this morning. Robert Duck Thursday. Welcome to Robert Duck Thursday. How are you?
Great, thank you. No worry about the Spanish. I live in Houston, Texas, so I live in a predominantly Spanish area, so I'm quite used to it.
You're in my world. So I gave you like a not excellent introduction here. I just said you've been in enterprise software for over 20 years. DigitalMeld is the name of your company. And I think that might have been what we started chatting a little bit about the event, right? Because maybe we talked about like what your company was about. Oh, I asked you if you work somewhere else, or maybe I thought you were at Microsoft. I don't know. And you were like, no, I actually am the CEO of my own company. And then you told me what said company does. And I went like, what?
Yeah.
Could you give us a little bit of background as to what your company is and why you founded it?
Yeah, so I've been in enterprise IT for 20 plus years, as you said. I worked at Microsoft for about 5 years as a premier field engineer. So that's just a PFE for anybody who knows that. That's an enterprise consultant. So I went to the clients. I focused on Active Directory and such. And that was like from 2011 to 2016. And I kind of fell in love with consulting. So because again, you go on, you're solving new problems every day, right? It's not the same old problems. It's the same old customers. You obviously experienced this as well, working with other organizations. And I just kind of fell in love with it. And I was like, hey, I'm just going to open my own at some point, at some time. I think it's going to happen. And I knew AI was coming. This was 2015, 2016 when I left, but it was still years and years away from being anything useful. And just, it got to the point where, about 2020, 2021, the world shut down and stuff, and everybody was working from home. I've been working from home since before the shutdown. And, I just said, I think now's the time. And so about a little over 3.5 years ago, pulled the trigger and said, hey, I'm just going to do some consulting. At the time, I didn't realize I'd be focusing mainly on AI. I didn't realize it'd come as quickly as it did, but I just like to solve problems for businesses. So then, when I go into a business, I'm just saying, hey, what's a problem you'd like what's something that takes you 5 minutes every day that wish you could automate? And back in the day, we were just using Power Automate and Azure Logic apps and scripting and that kind of stuff to kind of do that thing. But then now with AI, it's kind of just ramped it up to 10, a factor of 10, not even 10. And so we're a company that just works with what we call mid-market companies. What Microsoft says, we're a Microsoft partner. So we're $1 billion and below, 1,000 employee below. We have a couple that we worked with above that, but for the most part, it's helping them punch above their weight class. And I think the beauty of AI and technology is it's a great equalizer, right? And
I
so
love that.
so now you're going to have these mid-market companies. You're going to have $1 billion 5 and 10 person companies. It's just going to happen because I know, because I've kept metrics through my Veritas Kanban project, which you brought up, that is open source and it is on my GitHub profile, that I track like how quickly I get things done. That's one of the metrics. Is one of the key ROIs that you tell to a customer and or a partner, like, hey, we can help you turn around this business process. But at the end of the day, I just want to say that AI, people talk about how it's taking jobs and making people less important. I think it's amplifying how important people are. Because AI is very logical, but it doesn't understand the nuance and the gray areas. And that's where humans are really, really good. And I think for the most part, if you utilize these skills, regardless of what your industry is, what your job title is, you can upskill yourself and make yourself the best that you can be in that specific role. And I think we work predominantly with blue collar workers. Being from Houston, Texas, we fell naturally into oil and gas. We fell naturally into construction engineering, that kind of stuff. We call it redneck rich where I'm from. It's guys who
I
they
love
work
it.
they work in oil fields and wear coveralls, but they make 6-figure salaries. They were apprenticeships, and I think kind of learning from that perspective, and it's going to be really important. There's so much opportunity now, and I would like to be, instead of doom and gloom, focusing on the possible. Right? If you're a young person graduating from high school or college, go find a mentor that's retiring. The baby boomer generation's retiring over the next 5 to 10 years, and we're going to lose what is basically the Library of Alexandria and knowledge base and domain knowledge. And so find something you like, find an industry you like, and to just go be a sponge, an information sponge. And the beauty is these tools can help you do that.
I love that. And I love that for folks who are listening and are thinking, someone I respect in tech, I saw this morning, did a tweet about like, would I advise my kid to go into like some subset of engineering, like they're getting ready to go to college? Like, would I even tell them to go get a degree now? Like, I feel like we're all in this moment of like, what the heck do we do? Thank you for bringing up the fact that we're not losing our jobs and we're actually, humans are more important than ever. And this is coming from someone that's worked very closely with the OpenClaw team from the beginning, that is actually helping maintain the Microsoft side of the OpenClaw implementation, which I myself use every single day as a GitHub employee. So, again, not here to be replaced, here to be augmented. And that is what your company does. So, Brad, I don't know if you want to share the deck that you want, or you want to just keep chatting away. I did send on the screen the Veritas Canva repository, so folks can go check it out when they're done here. It is open source, of course, and it's gonna show you. And I appreciated what you mentioned about it being like a point of metrics, a source of metrics for you to do data reporting, because that's also another key point that I think we miss. Because we might all feel like we're working faster, but are we really?
Yeah. And that's where the AI psychosis comes in, right? You're going to make sure you're hitting your thresholds. You're going to make sure you use up all your tokens, that kind of stuff. Are you doing meaningful work at the end of the day? Or are you just doing busy work? And I think the big thing is, the reason I created Veritas Kanban is I discovered OpenClaw in late January, like most, I think, early adopters of it did. And it just like, it was the first, I've always knew AI was going to come, and I always knew it was going to be powerful, but it was the first tool that like unlocked the aha moment. I saw what was possible. It knew more about me than anybody else because it had access to everything I gave it access to. I'm one of those guys that gave it full access. I have my 20 plus years of enterprise security and governance and that kind of stuff. I know the proper frameworks to build around these things. So I don't recommend that for everybody, but I just saw what could happen really immediately. And then being a Microsoft guy, I worked at Microsoft. I used to have a blog, MicrosoftFanboys.com, like way back in the day. Like I've
oh my
always been
gosh,
a Microsoft guy.
I'm looking for this right now. What?
Oh, you have to go on the Wayback Machine, but like it's been gone for a while. But like I founded the first Xbox achievements website way back when. So I've been a Microsoft guy since day one. I owe my entire career to Microsoft products. And so like the first thing whenever I use OpenClaw is like, hey, how can I connect it to Microsoft 365? Because I think Microsoft 365 is the best bang for the buck, especially for mid-market and small businesses. You get access to literally everything. You don't have to have a Zoom subscription and a Slack subscription and then a
That gets
Google Workspace
expensive, let me
subscription.
tell you.
It
Yeah.
does. And like we can argue which one's best, which one's easier to use, especially in the startup community and the open source community. They have different, I know talking about Microsoft and the open source community is kind of a faux pas many times, but at the same time, the best bang for the buck. And the beauty is like Microsoft's come out with tools like Agent 365, which is a harness that, it's permissions sets kind of built around that. There's the Work IQ CLI. There's I'm building Dataverse and Power apps directly with like Copilot, the Copilot app, like having access to the MCPs and stuff like that. So if you live in the Microsoft ecosystem, Graph API and all this stuff makes these tools unlock exponentially if you know how to utilize those tools. And so again, we try to show companies now that you can increase your revenue, 2 or 3-fold without necessarily having to increase your headcount. And I think before that was kind of like hyperbole, and now it's completely real. I know because I'm doing it in my organization. I saw my organization get up to maybe 70, 75 people. Now I don't want to be over 25 to 30 people because I can operate at that same level, but keeping it more small team like focused and where everybody's, an owner and that kind of stuff. And I don't have to worry about the headaches. Is it, the risk versus reward?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So let's talk in terms of like practical. There is a lot of folks right now that they have their OpenClaw agents doing all kinds of things, right? Like I think y'all might have single-handedly be responsible for like the shortage of MacBook Minis.
Oh, right. Peter should have been gotten a cut of those
commissions for sure, right? Because everyone wanted to deploy their agents. Everyone immediately went to like hyperdrive build-in mode. And I can personally say I build a lot of stupid shit. Like I build a lot of things that use a lot of tokens from sitting from at the time I didn't worry about token usage. I'm much more concerned now. But I built a lot of things that were like, they were fun, right? They were practical. Some of them helped me kind of narrow the gap between, hey, I have this idea and like, let's pull it out in the world. Like, I love that. I love that. A lot of them that I was thinking, maybe this could be a business. There was like 50,000 other applications. Like the novel ideas are coming into a shortage, right? Like it's likely if you're thinking of something that's been done, or there is some mega corporation that has done it in a way that makes it really hard for you to capture any kind of marketplace for your idea. I'm not discouraging folks from trying it out because I'm like, go for it, prosper, like become the next multi-billion-dollar company. But from a practical standpoint, okay, sure, I've been playing with OpenClaw. I have a good understanding of software. I don't want to build another SaaS, man. Like help me understand how your company looks at opportunity in these different spaces that are much more niche, right? Like targeting this industry that is like underserved by technology in a lot of ways, right? Because we live in a bubble in San Francisco and New York and like the big cities for tech. We all think like everyone is thinking they just want to get acquired by a FANG. And the reality of it is like there is some mom and pop shop that could use your services. So help us understand how we can start thinking more entrepreneurial like that.
Well, I will say that, your personal use cases are going to vary drastically from the business use cases. And let me go ahead and share my screen because I have some things that I can share.
Let's do it. Yes, let's do it.
Let me, oh man.
And hello, everyone who's joining. What's up, Elijah? Oh, I see people I know. What's up, Amy, Sandish? Welcome, welcome. Thanks for being here. We have some love declarations. We have, y'all come lock and load this Thursday. What's up, Tommy? What's up, Smith? All right. Whenever you're ready, perfect.
Let me know if you guys see it. Okay, cool.
I see it.
So the first thing I want to talk about is, again, the harness doesn't really matter. I love OpenClaw, but at the end of the day, your process is far more important. And in a business perspective, it is all about SOPs or standard operating procedures, which most enterprises live in, right? They live with Sarbanes-Oxley, they live with HIPAA and NIST and all these other sorts of things. And so they already kind of live in this process world. Medium and small businesses, they were able to shoot from the hip a lot faster. But I think the big thing is trying to take these enterprise ideas and scale them down to a manner that is digestible for medium and small businesses and even solopreneurs, but and still thinking in that way. And the beauty is these models think in that the perspective. Models think in context, right? And so everything I do is at the context level. And like just think of a task, and that's why I created Veritas Kanban. That That was my mission control for my agents. And I don't recommend you use Veritas Kanban. What I recommend you use is taking your agent, your OpenClaw, and going and pointing it to my repo and say, hey, you know everything you know about me. Let's build something like this for our workflow.
Oh.
And I think that's the future, is people building catered solutions around their workflow. HubSpot is a product that everybody kind of knows from the CRM perspective, and small enterprises and medium businesses. And I had HubSpot in my organization. I didn't like it. It was way too complicated for what my organization is. So I built my own CRM. I built it in about 2 or 3 weeks, working on the weekends. And we did it we utilized it internally. And then now eventually it may lead to a product, but for now it's like, hey, that saved us, $2,500 a month. And I just did it in my spare time. And the best part is I learned how to use these tools as I was doing that. As I was going through this process, I learned how better to use these tools. And so while you were, building quote unquote stupid crap, like, you were learning, you're understanding the limits of this. And I think as long as you're engaged, that's what's most important. So there's 15 slides here. I won't run through all these. All these are part of, you go to github.com/BradGrew/OpenClaw-dev days. This is all here. You have access to everything. There's details, there's example agents, and you can go back to all the presentations I've given, including some at GitHub a couple weeks ago, back at Build. All that kind of stuff is here. I've kind of open source this, so you can just kind of point your agents to it and say, hey, I want to build a slide deck like this. Like this slide deck you're looking at right now is a slide deck that I built an hour before this conversation, because I'd used my previous context. And so ask questions in chat. Happy to answer those. But the big thing is, at the end of the day, it's all about people. And people would say AI is going to take over the world, and that's not true. Without people and the institutional knowledge that people who have been working in a job for 20 years have, AI can't solve those problems. AI has been trained on all the data in the world. It's not going to know how best to utilize your business, right? And Microsoft is the perfect example of this. They just announced they're hiring 6,000 new employees, and they're investing $2.5 billion into enabling AI engineers into their enterprise organizations, their enterprise partners, right? And so if Microsoft's doing that, and not only Microsoft, but OpenAI, Anthropic, Amazon, and Google have all put multi-billion-dollar use cases. Like, people need to know how to use AI. And the only way you do that is to sit with the business and empathize with them and understand what problems they're trying to solve. We follow the McKinsey & Company way. Literally, whenever McKinsey & Company goes into an organization, they're the masters of consultancy, right? They say, what problem you're trying to solve? And then they give them 3 options for trying to solve that. Maybe cheaper, faster, more expensive, like they give them 3 options of kind of everything. And we kind of do that. And the beauty is these tools can help you do that really, really quickly. But if Microsoft's seeing the value of investing into learning, to me, the AI experts are the people who have 20 years of institutional knowledge for a specific job. That maybe that's an oil field worker in West Texas. Maybe that's a lab technician working in an oil field lab. Maybe that's a construction engineering project manager. But once they learn how to use AI, they're going to come up with use cases that I could have never understood. Nobody in Silicon Valley or New York could have ever understood, because that's specific to them. And that's the beauty of AI, is it's personal. And so nobody has the right answers. You need to find the best workflow for you and your business, or you and your team, or you and yourself. And so don't be sold the bill of goods that there's a turnkey solution, because there's not. There's no shortcut. The only thing is you can get there faster, right? There isn't a shortcut. There's a turbo button. And that's what AI is. So happy to answer questions as this is going to. I don't want to just spout stuff to you, but again, you also have access to these. I'm sure we'll share those links in the chat and stuff. But really, it's build the harness. The harness doesn't matter. It can be open. We all know the models change every day. The best harness
for
changes
sure.
every day. I went through a GitHub red team alert thing yesterday where they.
Oh yeah, tell me about that. I saw that. I saw you tweeted about it. What was that?
So as part of the Secure Open Source Fund, which again, if you have a secure open source product, go look up GitHub Secure Open Source Fund, and they give free funding to open source projects. But not only that, they give you free security training, and it was like really intense security training for 2 or 3 weeks, I think. And then you have access to all these internal GitHub security folks. And then I think the OpenClaw team and I did that. 6 of us did that back in March, I believe. And then now, since we've gone through that, we have the ability to take part in these new, like they put up a cyber attack scenario, and we ran through that yesterday as teams and kind of did that sort of thing. And it was just during that, I was using my OpenClaw because I had context for my time during the training. I used Codex and I used GitHub Copilot. So the GitHub Copilot app, I had it like go scan all the edits and everything for the repo. And so utilizing multiple harnesses, the reason I could do that is because my knowledge base, or my foundation is set, right? You can pick up from Claude Code and go to ChatGPT, and pick up ChatGPT and go to GitHub Copilot app, and OpenClaw or Hermes or whatever you want. And so that's what I'm trying to teach people is build the foundation. And then the harness of model doesn't matter. Like new models come out every day. Kimi 3 came out. It's open source, came out today. And it's supposed to be revolutionary from an open source perspective. And so, so that's where I kind of look. And so whenever you're trying to get these things adopted within your organization, I like to create what I call a center of excellence. And I stole this from Microsoft. Whenever I was in enterprise IT, I was rolling out Microsoft Teams, an example, and they had a rollout plan, and they said, go create a center of excellence. And that's just taking key people from all over the organization, key stakeholders, and bringing them together, have conversations. And AI is no different. And the people who have done like big data projects across the organization. Hey, let's bring all the data together. Let's like update our schemas so they match, have the naming standards, that kind of stuff. They've already kind of gone through this process. To me, it translates just like that to AI. And so create a center of excellence, bring in key people, what we call the boots on the ground. I don't want to hear from executives whenever I go into an organization because they don't know the day-to-day grunt work, right? They don't know where these things are going to make the most. I want to know what outcomes they want. Hey, we want to know more about our quarterlies or our cash flows and that kind of stuff. I want to know about that. But like the day-to-day operations, the only people who know that are the people who are living in the trenches every single day. So it's key to have them as part of that conversation. You can't this can't happen in a 10,000 foot view. It has to happen on the ground. And I think that's where, the MIT study back in July that said 95% of all AI rollouts failed, from the enterprise perspective. And that's why Microsoft's investing, billions of dollars, is because you have to embed AI specialists within these organizations that just listen and say, what problems do you face every day? And, Jane in accounting, like what problems do you have? Linda in accounts payable, what problems do you have? Bill in health and safety, what problems do you have? Like you can't solve their problems. There's no turnkey solution because each company is different. Like we work in the oil and gas industry. And while we go to a company, like they're about 75% is all the same, but that last 25% is their secret sauce, how they operate as an organization. So nobody knows that until you're in it. That's why it takes 6 months to a year for a new employee to get caught up with speed. It doesn't matter if they have 20 years of experience in the same industry. There's just internal ways of doing things. Working for Microsoft is very different from working for Google or GitHub, right? Like GitHub internally works very different than Microsoft, as an example. So that's my big thing with leaders, is like empower the people to make the actual changes from that perspective. And the key from this point forward, like markdown is everything for models. This isn't the $1 trillion idea. What Microsoft and Google and Amazon and all of them are trying to solve is like, how do you take this personal context? So you have your OpenClaw, I have my OpenClaw. How do I bring our OpenClaw data together and make sense of that to our business? That's what Scout's trying to do, right? Like Scout's the first step in that for Microsoft, I think. That's what Work IQ is like, hey, how do we get this inference from all of our Microsoft data? Microsoft, I think, is at the forefront of this, and they're kind of a sleeper in it because most people who live in Silicon Valley and they live in New York at these startups, they don't understand the power of the enterprise and the power of the Microsoft stack. And like, to me, if you can build solutions on top of things like Dataverse, on top of things like Work IQ, on top of things like the Graph API, you can do some really, really powerful things because 9 out of 10 enterprises already live on the Microsoft stack.
Oh, for sure. Tell me, for people who might not know, because I know I mentioned it earlier, what Microsoft Scout is. Can you give us like a brief TLDR on that?
Yeah, so Microsoft Scout. So Omar Shaheen, it was called Project Lobster eventually. That's someone who's been at Microsoft for decades. I've been following him since his days at Hotmail. So anybody still remembers my personal Hotmail is still my personal email.
Oh my gosh, me, MSN.
yeah, MSN. There was live.com and like all that kind of stuff. So I still have my Hotmail. So but he had a brilliant team. He just started using OpenClaw within the organization. I'll let him speak to himself and like why he got involved. But like he's a true believer in the product. He was building stuff on his own, and the internal leadership at Microsoft said, hey, let's just get a team in front of me and see what can happen. And so he worked with the OpenClaw team, and they were able to stand up, Peter Steinberger and Vince Koch and the others at the higher levels of the OpenClaw team, and they were able to build something really great really quickly. Like I think the turnaround time for Microsoft Scout between like ideation and announcement at build was like 6 to 8 weeks, which for a company like Microsoft, that's astronomically fast.
Unheard of. Yeah.
And so basically it's your own OpenClaw type agent that lives within Microsoft 365, that lives in its own little safe space, that's connected to Microsoft Teams. That's its own little great situation here. And so I think I have the documents pulled up here, but like you can go to learn.microsoft.com, just look up Microsoft Scout, and it kind of takes you with what it is. But the beauty is Microsoft saw the power of what OpenClaw is. That's the thing too. If you don't understand like the power of AI, Peter Steinberger, the founder of OpenClaw, upended a $7 or $8 trillion business. He beat OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, Anthropic, like Groux, and XAI. That he beat all of them into making agentic AI cool or agentic AI approachable. One guy did it in about 2 months by himself. He's a very
Yep.
brilliant man who has unlimited resources and that kind of stuff, but like one guy. So if that can't tell you that you should be able to, you can do this, that's true. Like you said, someone's probably built a product you've already thought of, but that doesn't mean you can't make it better. I mean, doesn't mean you can't make it like, I think open source is the future. So I see people building open source projects and then like supporting it and or hosting it for people, following the WordPress models or the PostgreSQL model and that kind of stuff. Like that's why I kind of see the future of all of this. But Scout is amazing because Microsoft is in tens of millions of medium and small businesses. They're in 9 out of 10 enterprises, and they saw the value of OpenClaw and they go, hey, let's stand up something like that for all of our customers. And not only that, all the customers were yelling for it. Like, we need this.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Can you make it secure for us? Can you make it stable for us? Can you make it easy? Because that's the big thing too, is OpenClaw, as approachable as it is, it's still, you have to be kind of bleeding edge to understand it. And you have to be kind of a developer-y and be okay with the CLI and terminal and that kind of stuff. It's like, can we reduce the friction for the average customer? And Microsoft has nailed it right out of the gate. And they're just making it better and better and better. And I have full faith in Omar and his team and just improving upon it. And the beauty, what I loved about it is they made Teams the harness, Teams the communication platform, because that's how I got involved with the OpenClaw team to begin with. I was like, the first thing I did when I installed OpenClaw was like, people are using a Discord and Telegram and WhatsApp. I was like, I live in Teams. I want it in Teams. And so I took the 17 steps to get it in Teams and I go, this is too hard. And then I complained about it to Peter on Twitter, and Twitter, he's like, hey, I don't use Teams. And I'm like, well, I'll be your Teams guy if you need to. He's like, okay, come on. And then that got me involved with the Microsoft people. And so there's like a Microsoft for OpenClaw group that's on my Twitter account and stuff. Like, you can follow like all the issues and stuff we're doing. But and then the Azure people got on board, and then Omar and his team in Microsoft 365 got on board, and it just kind of went from there. And it shows you the power of one person did all of this. And so yeah, it's great. Kind of building on those SOPs. Again, this could be called skills within, the AI speak, but I call it SOPs because I live in the business world. Standard operating procedures, best practices is what Microsoft kind of called it back in the day. So if you're doing something repeatedly, document it. And the beauty is you can have your agents document it really well. But build these SOPs with people in your organizations to make sure you're not missing anything. Have it build a process flow diagram for you, like mermaid.js or something, to get through things really quickly, and to get something viewable in front of people. And then you can whiteboard the sessions and that kind of stuff. So build those SOPs, regardless of what process it is. And then Elon Musk, for all his flaws, he has a saying that says the best process is no process. And he's not saying processes aren't important. He says you have the iterative feedback loop to always try to improve that process. And I like to say that I like to be SpaceX, not Boeing, for this very same reason, right? We're going to blow up some ships. I think they're launching Starship again today. Like, they're going to make some massive mistakes, but they're also going to learn a lot. And they're like, people told him they could never do that. And he goes, why can't I? Why can't I catch a rocket with chopsticks? Why can't I land a rocket on a boat? Like, why can't you do these things with AI? Like, assume everything's possible until you're proved otherwise. Is the way I kind of like have started living. And AI makes that way, way easier. Assume it's possible until you're told that it's not, and or you figure out that it's not. But the beauty is, like you said, you're learning along the way. Like, whether you're making something, childish or something along, you learn something, and then you better how to do these tools. And so everything I do is by PRD, or project requirements documents. This is GitHub, so I imagine people are very familiar with that. But a project requirements document is basically just a document you create before you even start a project that outlines the goals of the project, what you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to do, that kind of stuff. And I use a skill called Grill with Docs, and that's from Matt Paddock. He has a great skill set for engineers. If you don't know who he is, you should be following him on Twitter and YouTube. In this slide deck, which you'll have access to from the repo, there's an example prompt from that perspective to show you what that. All it does is it just asks you qualifying questions as you. Hey, I want to build a HubSpot replacement, and I have a company of 5 people. Here's our LinkedIn page. Here's our website. Let's go through a PR. Let's create a PRD for this. And then begin that. And so everything I do, I start with a PRD, and then I use AI to create issues on GitHub. Everything I do is on GitHub. Regardless whether it's a technical problem I'm trying to solve, or like it could be a business process I'm trying to solve. It can be a project planning I'm trying to solve. I create GitHub issues for everything. That's become my Kanban board, for lack of a better term. Is I create GitHub issues that have the full context, and then I can hand that context off to other agents or my teammates or anything like that. And then whenever they're done, they publish a PR which outlines everything. And so GitHub is the perfect natural context capturer for these tools. And I don't think people think of it that way. They think of it as software, repository, but I use it as a knowledge repository personally, as well as a software repository. And so that's how I do. I'm like, hey, let's create the PRD, and my longest PRD is like 7,000 words. Like it's
Okay.
a enterprise level document. You can go as fine grained as you want. The models are getting better. So 5.6, I wouldn't go through 2 days of creating a PRD. I'd probably go through 6 hours of creating a PRD for a major client project or something like that. And then I create the GitHub issues, and it'll create 80 issues or 90 issues. And then you can do sprints or epics or however you'd like to do it from that perspective. And then I just slowly work through those. And then as part of that PRD, we're building out what those acceptance checks are. And then we build out that looping process, the constant iterative improvements. And the one thing people always forget to do with AI is ask the AI, is there anything I'm not doing that I should be doing? Is there anything that you would do? Have a conversation with it, treat it like an actual teammate. And I think that's LLMs are, in the past, is you ask a question, you get a response, right? Agents are like an actual teammate.
So Brad, if I'm a solopreneur, right? I have an idea and it's just me and my agent, we're going to make this work. I should still be creating issues and documenting things and PRDs. That's still a good practice, even if it's not I don't have a team in mind.
Yeah. I would recommend go look at Veritas Kanban. And look at my repo history of that. Go look at the repo history for this OpenClaw Dev Days. And you can see a lot of and I've got to the point where I also start capturing the prompts that led to that too. Because that's it, regardless of whether you use it in the future or not, that historical data you have, that's context. Microsoft is Microsoft, the Google is Google, and Amazon is Amazon, and Meta is Meta because of their data. Their products and services are a means of capturing more data. Why do they capture more data? Because that means that they can create new products they hadn't thought of. They can create new market segments. You need to start thinking like that. Your data is valuable. There's a reason they listen to you on your phone. They track you on your phone. Your data is valuable. You need to, as a solopreneur especially, you need to utilize that data to your advantage. And the only way you do that is I capture everything. I record meeting minutes with Claude or Copilot. I do. And I tell people I'm recording. I capture as much context as I can because they're doing that. That's how they're so successful. That's how, Codex went to 9 million users within 6 months, right?
Yeah.
Or that's how they're doing things. And so if you see the most successful people doing this, and I was blessed having worked with OpenClaw for about 4 or 5 months, seeing Peter Steinberger as an example, he operates at a completely different plane. He's like the Elon Musk of the world, but I was able to glean things that make sense to me and make sense to my workflow. And that's what I tell people all the time. I never just go to someone's repo and just clone it and then just use it. I point my agents to that repo and I say, hey, knowing me and all the context you know about me and how we work together, because I treat it mine's Veritas, the goddess of truth. That's where Veritas Kanban came from. That's my orchestrator. I say, hey, Veritas, knowing how we work, what should we take from this? I did that with Matt Poddock's skills. He has dozens of skills, and they goes, hey, I think you should take these 3 or 4 because they make sense to how you work. Okay, let's do it. And then I try it, and if I don't like it, I revert it. And that's the beauty of it. It's all everything I do. I back up to GitHub, and I can restore it anytime. And so whether it's GitHub or any Git repository, that's the power behind all these things, because everything these agents do is a markdown. And so that history, as I've updated and improved things, is also there for context too. This presentation you're looking at right now, I started it about an hour before we hopped on this call. And I was able to do that because I pointed to the previous episodes of the show. I pointed to our communications and our text messages. And I said, hey, I need to prepare for this. These are the topics I want to do. Use our previous slides as a starting point, and let's build from there. And I had a conversation for maybe 10 or 15 minutes for spit and polish. And then here we are. And that's where you should do for literally everything. And you only do that if you're capturing it all in a way. Whenever I deliver a project for a customer, I have a framework that's about 75% there for a similar customer in the same industry, right? So why would I not just point my agents to that and say, hey, like what we did for company A, I want to do that for company B, but they're twice as large and they have, these are the constraints that are specific to them. That's the last 25%. And so that's where those kind of SOPs kind of live in. And the whole point is you're building a record of everything you do so your agents can always refer to it. And again, are you going to always use it? No, but it's there in case you ever do.
Oh, I love that. Okay. So important to document, capture your own data, people. Also, I don't remember what I did this morning, much less. That's a good way to have that same historical context.
To be honest truth with you, whenever I have talks like this, usually have a pre-call and have a planning call and all that stuff, but we're both so busy. And I was hey, I have to plan. I don't remember if we had a meeting. Can you just check my meeting minutes? Can you check like, because I store everything in what I call my brain. I take all my transcripts and store it in a centralized brain. Like, can you just check and validate that I don't remember having a planning call? And just like, no, you didn't have a planning call. Oh, okay. Like, but now I know what you kind of want to talk about, so let's just do it. And you said something like business use cases kind of thing. And so like, hey, let's
Yep.
just build it.
Yep.
And so like you have that, basically you have a team behind you. You just need to use them as a team and not like as a, like they're a knowledge base. And so that's where that context comes in. It's like, from a business perspective, you like, let's say you don't have a process documented. Like most medium and small businesses, they don't have a process documented. Say we have an accounts payable process. Hey, we use QuickBooks, our bank is Chase. We get invoices these days of the month, that kind of stuff. Just have a conversation with it. Said we don't have a process. I'd like to start documenting that process, and that's where you're getting that SOP around. And then you fine tune that SOP with that agent over the next 4 or 6 months as you're going through your monthly process, your quarterly process. And within 4 or 6 months, you have this defined process that is bulletproof. And then you say, hey, take what we did for this process and like, let's repeat that for this next business process. And like, I tell people all the time, I call the people we work with our partners because they're not our clients, because I don't know how to solve their problems. I know what tools to help unlock their knowledge to solve their problems. Like, it's a true partnership. And I tell people, like, AI is a journey. I think for most organizations, it's about a 2-year journey. And that's with leadership built and everybody rowing in the same direction. And I say that's like climbing Mount Everest. That's our goal, right? But right now we're still on the couch eating potato chips or Cheetos, or like, how do we go from like couch to 5K? How do we go, how do we go to a half marathon and then a marathon and then an Ironman? And like, how do we work our way up to climbing Mount Everest? Like, it's just, you eat the elephant one bite at a time, right? And we're just your Sherpa along the way. And so you need a Sherpa within your organization to kind of guide people and understand these things. And that's where Microsoft stood up $2.5 million and 6,000 new employees. Is they're hiring 6,000 new Sherpas to help these organizations to get to their Mount Everest. Just now we talk some use cases. Every company has accounts payable, whether you're a solopreneur or whether you're an enterprise company, you have bills, right? And you have invoices and that kind of stuff. This is one of the easiest ways. Microsoft has vision learning models that are like 0.004 cents like per run on Azure Vision Learning that you can call via GitHub and all these other things to just like scan an invoice in and understand what's in that invoice, connect to QuickBooks or Dynamics or any other CRM. I mean, any other ERP you have. Accounts payable is one of the easiest things to do. And the beauty is these apps can do it in their sleep. Now you can actually do it with like Cowork or within the apps themselves, desktop access. They can just open your QuickBooks and click the screen around to do these things for you too. It's getting easier and easier. This is where we kind of tell people, hey, everybody has this. So everybody can relate to this use case. Like every single business has accounts payable. They have bills they have to pay. They have invoices they have to receive, and payments they have to process. And so this is one of the easiest ones. And again, how do you get started? I would just go open GitHub Copilot app and say, here's my company, here's our revenue, here's what we want to do. I want to automate my accounts payable. How do I start? What's my 3-month process to fully automate that? Let's start with I have a website, podcast, Start Small, Think Big. Like, start small, think big. Like, SpaceX started with the Star Hopper. It was, like for where Starship is now, right? It was like, can we land a giant rocket? Yes, we can land like, it literally looked like, a small little silo that landed. And now they're literally launching the largest rocket in the world later today. They didn't start with the largest rocket in the world. They started with Star Hopper.
When you go to the organizations and you're like, okay, this is where, or they hire you because they want to like improve our processes, like, how do you help them decide what they should tackle first? Because like you say, okay, everybody has bills. So that's like an easy get, right? Like everybody needs, or it would be smart for people to invest in optimizing how they do billing, because you want to get paid. That's important. But how do you advise like businesses as to where to start that modernization if that's what they're trying to do? Or do they tell you? Like, is that part of how they hire you?
They can tell me, but generally what they tell me is wrong. Because again, they're looking at it from their perspective. They're not empathizing with everybody else in the organization. And that's why the center of excellence is so important. You're getting key stakeholders from all over the business coming together and determining what is most important, because like sometimes the best thing you start with, I like to say, and again, it's going to be in a slide later, but start small, think big. Start with something easy. Build momentum, show the ROI, show the process. And then, because the whole point is, and Microsoft understood this immensely, is like you need champions within an organization. That's what your job is. You're a champion, right? You need to convince people in the organization that this is the right step to take. And the only way you do that is to make a good first impression. The only way you do that is to knock it out of the park the first time, right? And so I generally like start small thinking, but at the same time, they say, hey, like we have this guy who's going to leave because we've been working him to the bones and we want to make his job easier. Okay, let's start there. But you don't really know that until you have to bring people from all over the organization And maybe you're in a large organization. Again, I worked in the enterprise. That's when I got out of enterprises. I don't like roadblocks and, the silos and that kind of stuff. But you can scale this down to your team or your division or your site, or, scale it down in that perspective. Create a center of excellence for your Houston location, and the New York location can be crazy if they want to be, but the Houston location is going to have it locked down, right? So like that's just the way you kind of operate. And so that's my biggest thing is communication is the most important aspect of this. At the end of the day, AI is a people problem at the business level. And that's not going to change. Like until we have artificial super intelligence that's just going to be able to go into an organization and understand everything there is to ever know about that organization, we still need people. And that's just a people problem. So that's where I would start. And then, get that context. And then, from an accounts payable, marketing is another one that's obviously very easy. These are people who are also early adopters, marketing, that kind of perspective. This is where I kind of live as this operational agents and for like field workers or people who are working with data every single day, people who are doing things like people who work in a lab. They have laboratory management systems. A lot of time they're writing stuff on a legal pad. Then they go take the legal pad and they go and put it into a laboratory management system, or they go input it into a spreadsheet. I'm like, hey, how can we remove that step? So the best way to determine for an organization is like, what moves the needle for you? Mm-hmm. What's the most important part of your business? Let's start there. But like whenever I go to an organization, the first person I generally talk to is the receptionist. So I try to win the receptionist. I was like, what's something you do every day that takes 5 minutes, or you do every week that takes 30 minutes, you wish you could automate? And then I, on my own time, try to solve that problem for her or him. And then once I do that on my own time, like hey, they help me. If I could change a receptionist's life and make their life easier, they're going to spread that word around everywhere.
Yeah, so for sure.
Find those champions within your organization that are really important people that everybody loves and really respects and looks up to, and they just make their lives easier. And that's where I'd kind of do. Like you need to get allies. This is not something that AI is not something that can happen in a vacuum. It takes a village. And that's why I love open source. And that's why I love GitHub. And because it really does, it proves that it takes a village. Like OpenClaw was able to scale and be what OpenClaw was because it can move faster than everybody else, because you had at the thing, I think about height, it was like 80 really passionate maintainers working nonstop just because they were all rowing in the same direction, believing in the same thing. And I think in an organization, you can have that same sort of thing, but leadership has to enable it, right? And lots of times leadership just doesn't. Supply chain's another one. This is the funny thing is supply chain. We work with a heavy haul trucking company, and it's a grandfather, father, son, been around 35 plus years. This is one of those spit and handshake kind of businesses. Again, like these are people that just salt of the earth and hard workers, and they've done things the same way for 30 years, but they've been changed overnight. So heavy haul trucking, for those who don't know, they carry the windmill blades or the turbine blades, and they carry giant construction equipment and stuff like that. And like now all of them work for data centers. They're all carrying HVAC systems for data centers and giant server racks stuff for data centers. And so you have these old school blue collar businesses who are having to adopt to work for customers like Meta and Microsoft and Amazon and Google and Amazon and Microsoft and Google and Meta, they have much higher data standards than classic construction company. And so like it's funny, this the dichotomy of these classic blue collar workers having to adapt really quickly with these technologies, and they can. And the supply chain is again something that affects 25% of our economy in the U.S. is transportation, and AI is going to hit transportation really, really hard. Like I've taken Waymo, like there's Tesla self-driving taxis and that kind of stuff. That's going to happen with trucks. And so like, all those truckers that are going to lose their job, what can we do to upskill them? It's like, well, now you become a broker for all these agents who are just going and pulling all this autonomy. You have that institutional knowledge of how the trucking system works. And like in a heavy haul trucking, for example, they have institutional knowledge. Like I can't take that route because I know that there's a low bridge, or I know that it's too wide for that perspective. And I'm training with someone. I'm literally just turning on Copilot, letting it record as he's having conversations, remembering these tracks, because there's no possible way any AI can know that. Like Google has cars that they drive around everywhere with cameras, and they're not even tracking like low hanging, like all that kind of stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's just things change on the road every single day. And so just to know that even in these areas that you would think would be hit really hard, there are ways for people to upskill themselves. And I think, again, technology is a great equalizer, and AI is the first history in the history of tools that can help you learn that tool better. Everything I know about AI, most of what I learned about AI, I learned from AI. The foundational stuff about it, understanding where it came in the history and stuff, I learned a long time ago. But like how best to use AI, I'm learning from every day, because how I did things with AI yesterday is not how I do them today. This would be that. That's the thing too, is like as the models update, how you approach that model will change, but your business processes should not. your business processes are always going to be foundational, and that's always SOPs and PRDs and task orientation and documentation. All that kind of stuff is universal, and I don't think that's really going to change. So my big thing from this perspective is pick one painful workflow and then ship one reviewable artifact, and then kind of give it that harness, whether it's Codex or whatever. But the big thing is having those SOPs and PRDs and kind of go from that perspective. I do have a Discord that I have office hours and stuff. Feel free to join. It starts small, sstb.ai. Feel free to join that. But like, I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody. Just reach out to me on Twitter. I'm constantly on Twitter and LinkedIn. Happy to have a conversation with anyone about anything from this perspective. I love being an evangelist. I love talking about these things. I would think if I can do this, you can do this. That's my biggest thing. The single most important skill moving forward is faith in your ability to figure things out. And you have the world's history and knowledge at your fingertips right here. And if you're listening to this podcast, I mean, this presentation, you're on YouTube, you understand the power of everything, that you have access to all the same tools I do. And that's the beauty of this. And GitHub Copilot's the first place to start. You have access to all the models, and the GitHub Copilot app, which I've used extensively in the last couple of weeks, is a fantastic place to start as well.
For sure. Okay, let me take a quick look at the chat. And I know that there were some folks, you mentioned Matt, you mentioned a couple of folks earlier that are people that told leadership that it's actually worth your time. Would you mind dropping the link to where we can follow them? Because I think folks were like really interested in making sure that they also keep track of that. And then I am scrolling down just some comments about leaving them PRDs, keeping them stored, and in fact linked to one another. Yeah, you're like creating your own kind of neural network, your own red. Let me swap this up. That's a very good point. I think one use case for GitHub that maybe, I don't know if it's just, we just honestly don't talk about these things enough. Like what you mentioned earlier, Brad, like I have a brain as well. And that brain is basically everything. It's like backups of everything, backups of every piece of anything that I ever written, every presentation I ever given. And so when I need to do something new, I'm able to like point that. And that is a private repository, friends. Like you can do that, and you can have an agent that does their job to make sure that content is on a nightly job that actually doesn't update, like using Chronicle, but for your brain at the end of the day, and kind of backing up everything that you've done. Super, super helpful. So if you think about all the context that you have, that only you have it, start documenting it, and it doesn't have to be only for work things too. Like it actually helps me keep track of life.
Yeah. And that's one reason I kind of started, this. And so Andrej Karpathy, who now works for Anthropic, but he has his LLM wiki. That's kind of like the universal one for this brain perspective. And let me go ahead and share my screen. And so Andrej Karpathy, who again now works for Anthropic, but he had his LLM wiki. I'm sharing in chat as soon as I found my mouse cursor. I kind of took, I was building my own thing as I started with OpenClaw with the same sort of thing. I'll call it brain meld. And we do this internally. We're using GitHub right now. We're building our own Git kind of into it, but like we're using GitHub now. And here's like the architecture for what mine is. And again, I did mine from a neuroscience perspective. So this is just an Obsidian screen. So markdown files from an Obsidian perspective, but this is kind of the structure I came up for my organization. And I'm actually going to open source this project. It's called brainmeld.io.
Oh, nice.
So if you want to know that, but again, it's one of those, it should be within the next probably 4 to 6 weeks it'll be live, but it'll be a Mac app. So it's building that brain just from that perspective. We're making it more, right now it's neuroscience. So like a synapse and cerebellum and Ingram, that kind of stuff. We're just going to name it like files and memories and stuff like that to make it more user approachable. But like you need to come up with the same sort of like solution for you and your organization. And again, or your teammates, or like my co-founder's done it for him and his family. So his family, they all keep track of stuff the same sort of way. All their kids' homework is stored in the same sort of format, and all their personal vacation plans are stored in the same sort of format. So think about it from that perspective too, and it's really great.
Very cool. Oh, I can't wait to see this project. That looks really interesting. And this is Matt. All right.
Yeah. And so if you just click the skills here, he has a whole bunch of engineering skills, and he has great YouTube videos as well. But all of his skills here are just fantastic. Again, the ones I use, if you look at the engineering specifically, the one I use is like every single day. I use this multiple times a day, is this grill with docs. And again, I didn't like onboard the skill. I literally just pointed my OpenClaw and or my Copilot and I said, hey, let's onboard this skill. And I just pointed it to the repo. And I said, let's onboard the skills that make sense to me and make sense to us. And it pulled in 4 or 5 of the skills, and I can call them from Codex or OpenClaw or wherever. And I encourage people to do it that way. Again, kind of take the grill with docs and make it your own, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a base to how you do things. And the cool thing is, again, you're an organization. You go, how the heck do I even start with this in my organization? Your organization probably has a document repository somewhere, or it's a share folder, whether that's a SharePoint site, whether it's a Google Drive. Point this to it and say, I don't even know where to start. Grill me with docs. I'm trying to do this for my business. Where can I start? And it's going to just go scan all your documents, and then it's going to better understand your organization. It's going to give you a list of questions to start. Like, what problem are you trying to solve? What, do you want to become more efficient? Do you want to automate tasks? Like, and it's just going to ask you questions. It's just teaching a thinking skill set to the model of how to ask questions to you to solve business problems. And and the beauty is it's using your own context because you're providing with docs. There's a grill me and there's a grill with docs. And the grill with docs I love because you're giving it the context. You don't even need to really explain anything to it. You just point at some document and say, grill me with docs. And it goes, okay. And it's going to infer what those documents are. And so it's going to have the power to do those things.
So even if I don't know the first thing about how to work with skills, but I can just point an agent, and you can point GitHub Copilot to it as well. Just drop the URL. If you're in the Copilot CLI, literally drop the URL on the terminal and say, go to this repo and help me figure out what skills I could use from here, or what will help me accomplish X or Y. Yep.
I've never gone to like file settings, skill search, add skill. I literally just point it to repo and I say, and I do this for everything. Again, like with Veritas Kanban as an example, whenever I see someone who's done something with another open source project that I pointed it to the Codex harness, because the Codex harness is open source. I say, hey, take the best parts of the Codex harness and creates a backlog of issues of ways we should improve Veritas Kanban. And it literally, again, you can go look at the Veritas Kanban history. Like, it's all there. You go to I think my backlog is literally me pointing to other things and saying, hey, let's improve the project. And so like, I'm always constantly improving because I see what someone else is doing. I go, hey, I like the way they do that. And that's the power of open source, is you have the ability to learn from other people. And the cool thing is your agent, especially with GitHub Copilot app, can go scan all updates in the history of updates for OpenClaw, and just, how can I build my own OpenClaw? Well, it can literally just go scan the repo and it can build your own OpenClaw that's specific to you. Again, assume everything's possible. I think that's the big thing, is people think that, I can't do that. I'm not a software developer. At the end of the day, I'm more of a solutions architect. I know coding enough, but I've worked with truly genius people at Microsoft and other organizations, high frequency trading and corporate finance and that kind of stuff. And I would say I'm like a 5 out of 10 on a coding scale. That doesn't, to me, it's all about your organization and your delivery. Now, think of yourself as a technical project manager or a PM, like a Microsoft product manager, right? You're a product manager. You know everything about that product industry, about that product, and you know what that product needs to look like when it's done. The agents can be your team. They can be your engineering team and your research team and your marketing team. You're the product manager. And so just say, hey, I want you to be I want to be a product manager, like for this specific industry. Let's do it. And let's do a 3-month journey into upskill myself. Like, again, it's the first tool in history of tools that helps you, upskill yourself. And I didn't think OpenClaw changed everything for me. And I'll leave in closing this. Can you tell, this is my GitHub, can you tell whenever I discovered OpenClaw?
I have a slight suspicion is when the purple gets very purple.
Yeah, and I'll scroll down here. This is the actual one, but like, you can literally, there's days where I've had like 730 contributions, and like being around Peter's had 10 times this amount. I think is it like he's GitHub's had to like redo the API thresholds because of Peter and the OpenClaw team. But like, I wasn't building in public before, so I was still building. Mainly everything I did was in Azure DevOps. But like, again, it becomes addictive because you see, it's what I encourage everybody to do as well, is build in public, because it keeps you honest. Hey, I'm going to work on this new project. Whenever I started Veritas Kanban, like I went from idea to delivery to like open sourcing it. And I'd never open sourced anything personally. I'd worked on open source products within like 48 hours. And you can go look at the history of the project and stuff. But like, and it grew from just my own personal task board, my mission control, which is, I think, is where everybody kind of starts with, and the OpenClaw type areas. You start with your own dashboard. And I kind of made it myself. I said, from a business perspective. And for me, again, don't look at, if you need to do those SOPs as an example, I made sure that mine was documented really well. Because again, I come from the enterprise world where documentation is everything. And then so like, if you want to know like the SOPs, I literally built out SOPs. So like, here's the SOP for my integrations. Here's the SOP. Whenever I have a deliverable, follow this standard. And so that's what I encourage you to do. Regardless of what you're doing, you're building out standard operating procedures. And the beauty of this is like, now I can take my coworkers' agents, and they don't have all the context I have, but they have this. They have the actual SOPs that we've done. And so like, you need this kind of detailed documentation for everything your company does. And the beauty is I didn't write this documentation. Like, I don't remember what model actually wrote this one, but like, one of the models wrote this one. And just over time, again, if you go look at the history of what Veritas Common was, it was literally just a task board. And then it turned into, I wanted to know like time to completion. So I would know like how many tokens I was burning and all that kind of stuff, time to task. And so I that's all part of it as well. And then I wanted like security around it. Like, and then I did cross model verification. So if Codex wrote it, I wanted Claude to review it, that kind of thing. All those kinds of gates are in there. And like, you just kind of start and come up with better ideas. And then I have it where you can turn off all that stuff or turn it on because of user feedback and stuff. And so I recommend building in public. I've learned so much. I wish I would have started decades ago building in public. Like I've just learned so much because again, people hold you accountable for one. And then the first time someone like submits a commit or a PR or an issue to you're like, holy crap, people actually care what I do. And like mine's been tens of thousands of times. And I just built this for myself. I never once thought anybody would use it. I just built it for myself. And again, I recommend you don't use it. I recommend you point your agents to it and build your own. That's what I recommend. But people are still downloading it. So it's a great experience. And I highly recommend it. If you haven't built anything open source or taken part in an open source project, use these agents to do that. But just if you submit something to an open source, do your due diligence before. Say, I want to make sure that this isn't slop, because like a lot of open source maintainers are just getting inundated with slop PRs and slop issues. OpenClaw is up over 100,000 issues and PRs now. Like they were getting inundated with thousands a day. So just do your due diligence and just foster, get back to the community that supports you so well. And that's what
I love that. And honestly, if you open source, I think people get very discouraged because they're like, well, if I'm going to invest the time in open source and something and then it doesn't get used, it doesn't get forks, it doesn't get starts. Like, listen, you don't know. It might be one person. I feel like even if just one person gets value from something that I built for myself to fix my own problem, is worth it. It was worth the time that went into open source in it. So I love that giving back concept. I had one question, Brad, and I promise I'm gonna let you go now. But
I'll talk all day. So if you let me talk, I'll talk all day.
I have one question, and thank you so much, Amy. You're always a supporter of Robert Duck Thursdays. But as you're working with these organizations that you're coming in and helping them implement this AI in a way that actually makes sense for them, she had a question about bumps on the road, maybe something that is happening. Of course, we can chat on house rule it here, like tell the lesson, not the name. Something that surprised you, especially because you work with such, like for us, non-traditional fields, we would say. Because I mean, I guarantee you, like I want one more person that's watching this in chat. If you work in the oil and gas industry, let me know. I guarantee you're the only one, Brad. So anything in particular that come to mind about maybe there was some learning that you took from one of the partners or folks that you work with?
I think I'm going to lean back on the SpaceX analogy, like embrace failure. Whenever you fail, you're learning. And I think it's hard for, especially, and again, that's one reason I got out of the Fortune 500 world, is because they think in quarters, right? Simon Sinek is a great author. He's like a self-help type author. He has called The Infinite Game. He has Leaders Eat Last. He's just a great author about like the kind of way to look at things. And whenever I started my business, I go, I'm going to build an infinite game. I'm not trying to solve the next big win. I'm trying to leave a legacy for my family, my friends, my coworkers. Like I'm trying to leave a legacy. I'm not trying to, and I understand, like if you work in the corporate world specifically, it's really hard because again, the VPs, they get their bonuses every quarter, right? They just do.
Yes, they do.
So I like to think like there's a reason that companies like SpaceX, there's companies like OpenAI, companies like Anthropic have literally shot up, is because they embrace failure. Like if you remember 2 months ago or 6 weeks ago, like Anthropic accidentally released all the source code for Claude code, and they could have gone like a oh my god, what did we do? They took it in stride. They go, hey, look, people have like cloned it and made it their own and all this other stuff. That's not going to define us. And I think I always think back to the Batman movie where like Bruce Wayne falls down a hole and his dad goes, why why do we fall, Bruce? And it's like, so we learn to pick ourselves back up. And I think you have to take those lumps. I think the best people in the world in these organizations are the ones who have taken the lumps. They've been there for 20 years. They've been through the highs and been through the lows. They understand. They know that it all kind of evens out in the end. And if you just improve just 1% every day, you're going to get better and better and better. And again, that's my big thing is like, I never thought I'd be here where I am today. I started an organization to just solve business problems, maybe use Power Automate, maybe, just, the normal McKinsey and Company type stuff. And like now I'm like giving talks and I was part of this massive open source project and going to these like things that I never thought I would do. And I only did that because I put myself out there and I was open to, like, I think learning from those mistakes and embracing them, and then not even that, sharing your failures. Like sharing your failures to me is way more important. And again, SpaceX, like they have a compilation of like 5 minutes of their rockets blowing up that they shared on Twitter, right? So like you have to kind of just like embrace that, and like those bumps in the roads, and the people you work with should know that. Like, hey, not everything we swing for the fences, and not everything's gonna be a home run. Sometimes it's a single, sometimes it's a ground out. Like at the end of the day, that's okay. Like it's as long as you're moving forward and you're learning. Like I just don't. I'm an internal optimist, I think, which I know in the business world is kind of tough, but especially the enterprise world. But like the bumps in the road from a client perspective was, again, we spent almost 6 months on a sales process. Like we're going to stand up Dynamics for them. Like they were going to move from like QuickBooks and like go into Dynamics, all that stuff. And we get in there and we do our discovery session. And we found out, like, again, you don't have processes. You have way bigger problems. There's people who are trying to automate things in the lab that don't know, they're just working 80 hours a week. And like, you don't know. And so those bumps in the road to me are more about, once you start having conversations with people, you understand that there's bigger issues within an organization than you or even need leadership new. And like, that's why I found it valuable. It's like, we're facilitators more than anything. I'm just like much like me with the Microsoft team and OpenClaw, I didn't really do a whole lot. I was just like, hey, I love these tools. I eat, sleep, and breathe them. I know work with them. I sell with them. And then I love this other one who's an open source project, and nobody on the team uses Microsoft products, and they kind of put their thumbs down at teams and this stuff like that. It's like, how do I bring these things two together? And I think being involved in other communities too, going to the Copilot Dev Days. The OpenClaw Dev Days is literally a ripoff of Copilot Dev Days. If you go to github.com/Copilot-Dev Days, there's one of those. And I've told the team that I use that. I was like, hey, you've built something similar like that. I'm going to totally use that and do that. And so again, look for ways to give back. I think if we don't want the Elon Musk and the Sam Altmans of the world to be the ones leading this, open source is the future. Open models, Kimmy, K3 came out today. It's going to take a village. And I think, again, technology is a great equalizer, and you have the power. If I have the power, you have the power. So
I love that. I love that. I think I appreciate you being an optimist. There is enough crap and like sadness in the world. So I appreciate that. I think if I take nothing from this conversation is maybe I was looking at it from the point of view of like, all this stuff I'm doing is useless because it might have solved one problem for me. But what you mentioned earlier, while I was in the process of doing that, I learned a ton about things that I probably would have never dug into. And it's so much easier to think that somebody else built it already, like it's done. But why not? Brad, you can make it better. I can make it better. David, you can make it better. Jeremy, you can make it better. Amy, you can make it better. And if you can make it better as a business, you can make it better for yourself. So I love it. We need more forks. We need to point agents to like just go grab the best of the products and like make them your own. So an open source for the win, 1,000%.
Yeah, you bring a good point. I'll say you need to be your best champion. You need to be your own champion. You need to have faith in yourself. You need to get back to yourself. You need to say, I deserve this. I deserve to spend a weekend blowing through tokens, building something that's just for me. Again, you don't know what's ever going to come out of that. Again, I built Veritas just for me. I didn't know what, and it's not massive or anything like that. I didn't know it, but it's one of those things. If you write a blog post or post a video and it's helpful to someone and one person thumbs up it, like makes your day. Yeah. And I think that's all that really matters is like, are you leaving? I was a Boy Scout. So are you leaving it better off than you did when you started the day? Are you leaving, when you left the park or the campgrounds, did you leave it better than you found it? That, to me, that's what I try to do every day. And some days are better than the others, but at the end of the day, we're beyond blessed that we have ideas. Anybody who wants to be a builder now can be a builder. And so people who have ideas, just think about all the artists and people that aren't engineers who can now see things through fruition. Like the education system is really big to me. I'm part of Texas A&M. My friend works there as a professor in AI, and I'm always involved with the students there. And just seeing what people are doing, like catering, like K through 12 educators, catering things to the individual student now. And
Yes.
like being able to do things like that, we're beyond blessed. I think one of the things too with the World Cup and seeing all the European fans and stuff coming to America, I'm like, America's amazing, and we always forget, like, we take it for granted. I think the technology world's very much the same. It's like, we have it great, guys. Yes, there's some evil and bad things out there, but at the end of the day, the greater good's always going to win.
And we all have the power, my friends. We all have the power. So I love
Open
this.
source is the proof. Like
Open source is the proof. 100%. We're going to try and leave it better than we found it. Brad, you're a star. Thank you so much for spending time with us here today. I'm going to share one more time on screen your Twitter account so you can go follow Brad. You're always posting quality stuff. You're not a clickbaiter. So thank you. I appreciate that. And I can't wait to see what's going to happen with what you take in DigitalMeld, like what else is coming. Please, when you do release this brain mesh thing, like that looks super interesting to me. Like, come back, bring it to Open Source Friday. Folks, if you go on and try Brad's Veritas project, or just follow him, you're going to learn something. So this is great. Thank you all so very much.
Yep.
And Brad, what is coming up for you? Like, is there anything that you want to share? Anywhere you're going to go speak at? Like, anywhere where we can meet you in person?
Yeah, so I'm always speaking. Most of them are virtual right now during the summer, but I'm always speaking. I hope to see GitHub again at GitHub Universe. I would love to be there for that. I loved being there for Microsoft Build and coming to the GitHub offices and having the OpenClaw event there. And I spoke there at the influencer event too. So I'll work with Kevin and Ashley. And Ashley Wolf, your teammate, has some amazing of those. I built these just for myself. These little fun games she made, and I had a blast with those.
All of them, yes.
And I had a blast with those, and so I know those spread laughter and love and stuff like that. So just know there's nothing silly. If you love it, someone else is going to love it out there. There's 8 billion people in the world. Put it out there and somebody else is going to love it too.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I have to do a quick congratulations, because look at this. What's up? Your first comment session is under review. Never thought I could do this until now. It's Starlo. We live in amazing times, and way to put yourself out there. Every single one of you can do that. Think about the thing that you want to make and just go do it. Go do it and document it. Do it properly. Do it with PRDs. Do it with everything should have an URL and do it properly. But thank you all so much. Thank you, Brad. I'll see you next time.
Yep. Start small, think big, guys.
How great is that? I love it. I didn't know this was going to turn into like a motivational session, but I feel great about all the time that I spent doing things just for myself. If you want to go take a spin through the many repositories. I gotten better about making, not me, actually, my agents have gotten really good at keeping things very tidy and organized, especially projects that I'm open sourcing. Like right now, I'm actually working on a new release of my VS Code extension that I created for myself. And it's helped some people, so it's alive and well. So friends, go ahead and follow Brad. He is a star. If you have any ideas that came from this stream, let me know. Tag me on socials. I love to hear it. One thing I want you to remember, like he's found a very niche market for his skills. And what he said at the beginning, I firmly believe, like no one is the expert in your business but you. And there is an application of all of this technology that we can bring to those businesses. But at the end of the day, yes, that person who's been driving that semi for 20 years, it's going to know better how to get through a passage than this satellite picture. And kind of capturing that brain trust and finding a way to bring the technology into augmenting that ability, that's the money right there. That's the sauce. So thank you all so much for being here. We'll catch you next week in another Robert Duck Thursday. I love this. Think big, start small. Can't wait to see what everybody builds from this session. Appreciate you all. Thank you for being here. And I had a question earlier about I have to do this before I leave, because listen, if we don't talk about the GitHub shop, yes, I have a header hat on, and yes, I have a body t-shirt on. And if you must know, I'm not wearing them right now, but I do also have footer socks. We got to keep it fun around here. Thank you all so much for being here. Catch you next time.